This is part 22 of the Irrational series, brought to you by Anya Kay. Mike pulled up, parallel parking smoothly next to the curb of your house, and bounded up to the front door. There was a full trash bag on the front steps. An odd sight. Aizawa didn't usually leave trash bags lying around, but he was still recovering from having his arms broken. Mike hefted the bag up and walked it over to the trash can on the curb, before returning to burst in the front door per his usual style. Aizawa was just sitting down on the couch. He looked up at Mike, surprise flickering over his features and shifting into a frown.
"How many times have I told you to knock?"
"Haha, good one." Mike plopped down on the couch next to him, then looked around. "Where's Eiko? I need to give her all the biased commentary that I've been holding in the entire sports festival. She was totally amazing!" Aizawa glared at him tiredly.
"Keep your voice down. She's asleep."
"Already? It's not even 8 p.m.
"It was a long day for her,"
Aizawa maintained. He started taking off his boots. Something felt off. Had Aizawa and you had another argument? Mike found himself looking at Aizawa as he thought. Aizawa always took off his boots at the door, but here he was, wearing them in the living room. As Mike watched, Aizawa tossed his head slightly to flip his hair out of his face. Since when had he ever minded hair in his face? A disturbing suspicion began to take hold. "Sho, can you forward me the email from Nezu about the new training policy? I think mine got deleted." In reality, there was no such email. And Aizawa, a stickler for staying on top of work, would know. Especially if it was about a training policy.
"I can do that."
Aizawa sighed tiredly.
"I'm going to take a nap now."
He settled down, only for a murderous Mike to pounce on him, hands at his throat.
"Mike!"
Aizawa sputtered.
"Katsumi!"
Mike hissed, looking directly into Aizawa's eyes.
"What did you do?"
Aizawa stilled, dropping all pretenses. The cold laugh that followed sounded wrong, coming from Aizawa's throat. It pained Mike. He wanted Katsumi to get out. But if there was any chance of getting information from him...
"Present Mike," Katsumi said through Aizawa. "I had my doubts, but you're smarter than you look."
"Does All for One share that opinion?" Mike demanded. Aizawa looked surprised, then chuckled.
"Nice try. Shooting in the dark, hoping for me to confirm who I'm working with."
"We know more than you think," Mike countered. "You were supposed to wait at least 6 months. That's how the drug works, isn't it? What changed?" Aizawa's eyes widened, then narrowed calculatingly.
"You wouldn't be bothering to dig for information if you had it all. Goodbye, hero. See you later."
Aizawa went limp, then opened his eyes as himself.
"Mike?"
He looked around. Mike turned and ran up the stairs. He barged into your room. You really were asleep, breathing peacefully. He came to your side and shook your shoulder gently. No reaction. A drugged sleep, then. He looked around for clues of what had happened, but found none, and pounded back down the stairs to see what Aizawa remembered. Aizawa still sat on the sofa, but his demeanor had changed. He leaned forward, head drooping, hair obscuring his face completely. "Sho?" Mike slowed cautiously as he approached. Aizawa lifted his head slowly, and Mike saw what he held in his hands. An empty, needled syringe. Aizawa's cold, indifferent exterior was breaking in his eyes.
"Mike," he asked hoarsely, "what have I done?"
He suddenly jumped to his feet and raised the syringe to shatter it onto the floor, but stopped, clenching his teeth and lowering it with white knuckles. His shaggy dark head drooped to his chest.
"We need to save it for the lab,"
he said emotionlessly. "Sho," Mike said carefully. "What do you remember?" Aizawa turned and headed upstairs like a zombie. Mike followed, worried. Aizawa stood by your bedside, leaning against the wall and staring down at you. Only when Mike approached did he notice the glisten of tear tracks on the man's face. Mike felt a sharp twinge of anger, seeing Aizawa's controlled exterior shatter.
No one should be able to force Aizawa's humanity to show. Not like this. He placed a hand on Aizawa's shoulder. Show, he started. I don't remember anything, Aizawa interrupted. It's a blank from the second I saw Katsumi. I found the syringe in my pocket. What happened is obvious. Mike didn't say anything. He could see that Aizawa didn't want to talk about it any more than he had to. Aizawa's eyes gradually regained their steely quality as he gazed down at you. Mike, help me, he commanded. He was back. All action, no hesitation. Mike helped him lift you out of bed and lower you onto the ground. They checked you for injuries, and found none, except the tiniest prick in your inner elbow where you'd been stuck with the needle. Aizawa lowered his face next to yours, checking your breathing and inhaling a slight ether-like scent. Chloroform. Only a slight twitch in his jaw muscle betrayed his emotions. Take her to the hospital, he ordered. We don't know what effects this may have on her. I'll join you soon. I'm going to take the hypodermic needle to the lab so they can analyze traces of the drug before it gets tainted by air exposure. Mike lifted you in his arms, careful to support your neck. Aizawa paused. His gaze lingered on you. I've got her, Sho, Mike assured. Aizawa nodded sharply and turned away, running down the stairs. Mike carried you down to his car and buckled your limp, sleeping form into the back seat. Soon he was lifting you and carrying you into the hospital. It didn't take long for you to get medical attention. The front desk took one look at your unconscious state and let you in without questions, directing you to a nearby room and calling a doctor. Mike explained briefly that you'd been attacked and injected with an unknown substance. They wheeled your bed to another room that was closer to emergency life support equipment, which you might need depending on what happened. But you just kept sleeping peacefully. It was almost 9 p.m. by the time Aizawa appeared in the doorway. You stirred slightly. Aizawa strode over and grasped your hand. He felt a terrible sense of déjà vu. It was just like 7 years ago. Your point of view. Your vision swam as you tried to open your eyes. You only briefly glimpsed Aizawa leaning over you before you squeezed your eyes shut again. A pounding headache started up, and you groaned. The hand holding yours tightened. You grasped it back, and it relaxed slightly. You dozed for a while longer until your headache faded, then opened your eyes. The first thing you became aware of was Mike snoring in the corner. And then your gaze drifted up, and you saw Aizawa's dark eyes staring into you intently. He still held your hand. Normally, you would have realized how worried it meant he was, and wanted him to stop. But you felt so tired right now. It was nice to be babied. Water, he offered. You nodded weakly, and a moment later you felt a cool cup of water at your lips. You took small sips. When you stopped, he took the cup away and let you regain your breath. It was that villain again, wasn't it, you said? The one who took over Mike when I was little. Aizawa examined you impassively. What do you remember? I was sitting on the floor studying. I heard footsteps, your footsteps, behind me, and then someone put a rag over my mouth and nose. You grimaced. I didn't react fast enough. The fumes were too strong. You eyed Dad suspiciously. You know more about this than you're letting on, don't you? What are you trying to protect me from? Aizawa was silent, still studying your face. We know very little, he finally told you. Only that it was the same villain, like you said. He is lying. You knew it, and you felt strangely calm. Not angry, just empowered by the clarity of a single thought. You were going to uncover the truth for yourself, and face it. Aizawa noted the determined glint in your eyes, and sighed. Everything about that look says problem child, he muttered. To stop you from endangering yourself, we'll talk more once you're recovered. You smiled, a weak but triumphant smile. Mike suddenly snorted as he woke up. Where? He asked. Then his memory of the day's events caught up, and he jumped to his feet, coming to lean over you worriedly. How's my niece feeling? He smiled at you, eyes anxious. "I'm fine, Mike," you answered wryly, voice still a bit weak. Mike's green eyes held a bit of hesitance, but he put on a bright grin. "All right, kiddo. You rocked it out there at the sports festival. Have you always been able to move that fast?" He went on enthusiastically, telling you all about how awesome you were. You chuckled, slightly embarrassed. While Mike chatted with you, Aizawa took the time to think. What had caused the villains to move their timeline up? What did the drug do? Thinking rationally, it wasn't intended to kill you. Then what? It may give you an ability they could use, but in that case, why not give it to one of their own organization members? If the villains didn't want to take the drug themselves, that indicated extreme side effects on the user. The thought was a disturbing one. But why you in particular? Why had they kept such close tabs on your life? Was there something unique about you? Something he was missing? He scowled. Too much speculation. It would be more rational to think of actions he could take to prepare. He'd already taken the measures of training you to protect yourself. No worries there. You were a formidable fighter. Unless you were attacked by someone you trusted. The fact that Katsumi had used him to attack you sickened him. You hadn't been on your guard, because it had been his scent, his footsteps. Focus. Yes, he hated Katsumi Shinso, but he needed to think rationally, to plan. The villains were on the move. Coming out of their long-term silence meant that they were ready to strike, but it also meant that his chances of catching them was exponentially higher. The police had a better sample of the drug than they'd ever gotten before. They had a fresh trail to follow. Those leads might help locate their base, and possibly even reveal elements of their plan. Aizawa got out his phone. It was convenient to be able to use his hands again. He texted Tsukauchi for an update on the drug analysis. Tsukauchi texted back promptly, and a conversation ensued. Tsukauchi, thorough results should be ready by tomorrow evening. The lab is working on it right now. Aizawa, good. Can you send out some undercover agents to sniff around? Preferably some who could get recruited by the villains. Tsukauchi, you're confident Katsumi Shinso isn't working alone? Aizawa, Mike tried to get Katsumi to confirm that he was working with All for One. The exact reply was, quote, "Nice try, trying to get me to confirm who I'm working with." Tsukauchi, so he accidentally confirmed that he is working with someone, even if it's not All for One. Aizawa, right, unless he was trying to misdirect us. Tsukauchi, but you're willing to bet it was a genuine slip-up? Aizawa, Mike was positive. As much as I hate to say it, he's never wrong when reading people. Also, the idea that Katsumi is working with someone fits with what happened when Taro Teshima was freed. Tsukauchi, I agree. There's a mastermind behind this. Katsumi is a pawn. Aizawa, dangerous for a pawn, but yes. Tsukauchi, the Eiko Aizawa case was closed a few years after the first attack for lack of leads. I wish the circumstances for reopening the case were different, but at least we can mobilize resources to solve it. I'll call in some undercover agents and brief them. Aizawa, thanks. He set down his phone, watching you carefully as you talked with Mike. You seemed so normal, despite the mysterious injection, but he couldn't shake his unease. What time is it? You asked brightly. Mike laughed. A better question would be, what day is it? You've been asleep for 18 hours, kid. Your eyes widened. It's tomorrow? I mean, you know what I mean. Wow. You sat back, looking up at the ceiling. I'm pretty sure that's more sleep than Dad gets in an entire week. Mike snorted at Aizawa's flat expression. Yeah, kid, I think you got him there. You suddenly put a hand to your forehead, swaying as a strange sensation passed over you. Aizawa and Mike were on their feet immediately. All right, Eiko? Aizawa asked, brows furrowed. Yeah, you laughed. It was just... Like a puppet with clipped strings, you dropped forward into his arms. Fear lit his dark eyes, but a moment later, you woke up again. It was just an odd feeling, you finished. You looked around at Aizawa and Mike's stricken expressions. Why are you staring at me like that? You shuddered as another wave of the strange feeling washed over you. Mike, get a doctor. Another shudder ran through your body, and when you looked up, you glimpsed Mike vanishing from the room at a run. Dad, you gasped. It feels like my quirk. I think I'm gonna shapeshift. Before you even finished, Aizawa grasped your shoulders, looking down at you with flashing red eyes and floating hair. The feeling immediately vanished. You sighed with relief. He stared down at you, eyebrows drawn above his steady, glowing gaze. It wasn't possible. He couldn't cancel your quirk. He'd tried many times in the past. So why was this working? What had they done to you? Had they given you another quirk? Hi guys, thanks for listening to part 22. I'll have part 23 ready by next Friday. I also wanted to thank all of you so much for making it this far into the series. I honestly don't think I would have kept writing this series for so long if not for all of your encouragement. And it's super fun, like, in the comments, so many of you, because of all the different chapters you've commented on, I feel like I know you by name now, and whenever you comment, I recognize your name, and I'm like, oh, it's them again, yay! Thanks so much for creating this community and cheering me on. It makes me even more excited to write stories for you. If any of you are curious about my current writing progress, I have currently, as far as what I've written, I just finished writing part 27 yesterday. So, as planned, I'm staying about 5 chapters ahead with the writing, so that I can make sure everything fits together really nicely. And I think that this series will probably have, I think my estimates are always underestimates, but currently I'm thinking that there will be about 35 parts total. We're definitely getting more towards the final plot, which is so fun. I've been planning the ending of this series since about part 5. So yeah, I've been thinking about it for a long time. Oh, also, other news. I haven't told anyone this yet, but might as well for those of you who are listening this far into the author's note at the end of the video. Anyways, I'm thinking that after this series, I'm going to do a Present Mike's Daughter series. I've already started writing the first chapter of that and plot outlining a bit for that. It's so much fun to write, and the plot ideas I have for it excite me a lot. Like, I can't wait to write it. Also, special thanks to Gmark. She has contributed so much amazing art for this series. And all of you who have sent me fan art, who have emailed me fan art, or contributed fan art, thank you so much for sharing your talents. Take care of yourselves, all of you. Good luck in all of your goals that you're working on, whether it's school, or creative stuff, or hobbies, or skills you're trying to gain. No matter what it is, I am here cheering you on. Bye! See you next time!